Welcome to a new episode of Advancing Consciousness series with Franco Di Nicola. This is a place where people can come to gain further insight and clarity as to what is going on and how we can shift things on a personal and global level, while also accessing higher levels of consciousness and awareness. We bring this series to you free of charge so that many are able to access this information. However, if you resonate with what Franco shares and you would like to support his work to get more content out, contributions are welcomed and greatly appreciated. A link is in the description and will be provided in the chat if you feel guided to do so. Also, we have many previous workshops, such as the most recent, Bringing Out the New You to Play in the New World, along with our membership program, Let's Talk About You, where like-minded people come together bi-weekly to talk about the topics requiring deeper understanding and clarity. All of these are available on Teachable, and we encourage you to check them out as they are great resources at very affordable prices to assist in better understanding this human experience. The Teachable link will also be provided in the chat and is also in the description. And lastly, don't forget to share. As more of us come together who are creating shifts in themselves, the more effective it will be to shift things globally. Thank you for joining us and being part of the change. Enjoy today's broadcast.
Everybody, to another episode of Advancing Consciousness series. And today we get to play again, as we do on Tuesdays. And today we have episode 43. And the focus at this time is to really look at our human experience, our human beingness, our human body and its capacities. It became quite important for us to understand it. Some of it was covered in the workshop that we just did on Sunday, which was just a day and a half ago. And if you missed it, please check out the link when you get a chance to register. The video and audio recordings will be made available. We have a raw, uncut version available right away, but we will also segment it and so forth. So if you have missed it, then the opportunity is for you there to also to engage in it, because it's really powerful for exactly where we are today as things continue to move forward. So many of us have been underestimating in a huge way all the benefits and the capacities and the capabilities and really what it means to be in a human form on this particular planet. And I know you've heard me say it several times along the way that there's such a uniqueness about this experience, but also the fundamental construct that went into the retooling of planet Earth. What we are experiencing at this time on planet Earth and what has been set up from 15,000 years ago was a huge leap forward in technology, in a sense, when we're referring that as a reference on how we can actually tool a particular planet in such a fashion that it will carry many streams of energies that could be utilized on so many levels. And that was something that was a marvel in a way, using the engineering aspects of many different souls that were involved at the time in different physicalities as the contributors. But we will cover a lot of that today. But at the same time, as we were retooling planet Earth, and my soul was directly involved as one of the head engineers at that time, to really get involved in creating something that had not been created, and to create something that has such powerful variance that most of the planets did not represent it. Let's put it this way. Most of all the planets that are within our galaxy are very specific in harnessing a certain band of experience, consciousness, and how it hosts certain physicalities and all the sentient beings associated on those playgrounds. So at this point in time, when all of that was coming for a retooling, because we went through the Lemurian and the Atlantean two experiences and many more before that, but this time when it was retooled, it wanted to do something different, with also the acknowledgement that whatever was going to be presented was not going to be in one way or another, interfered to the same degree where others, like the Atlanteans and the Lemurians, faced. Now, it gave us a long opportunity, or quite an opportunity, to really harness so much. But it doesn't stop on the planet. So, just to touch bases on the planet, when it was retooled, the organic matrix that was put into place to present our experience was kind of encoded in such a way where it was able to support everything from third dimension all the way to ninth dimension. But not only that, but also it was also self-evolving. And the sense was not only evolving because of the humans that were going to be coming onto the planet, but evolving also with its connections, through the connections through the inverted, what we call the matrix, that was connected to all of the other matrices in our quadrant of the galaxy. Now, the positioning of our planet was quite unique too. Mind you, that we're not totally unique in a sense, it's never been done before, but the way it was shaped, the way it was connected, the way it was put online was somewhat different and quite a bit unique on so many facets. Now, one of the things that the engineering team decided to do to support and to utilize the planet as a potentiality to have many other species from other planets to be able to visit, to harmonize with us, and to play with us, in a sense that it became like a multidimensional but a multiple race kind of playground, which the matrix would continue to encode so that it would harness certain frequencies that would be utilized so that the visiting species coming onto the planet will have some resemblance of home, in a sense. So that was all plugged into it. And then to even enhance it even further, so many different sentient beings were put on the planet. This referred to not only the planet's encodement, but also the different species of plant life, which are all sentient beings. They all harness and hold a certain frequency. They all transmit a certain frequency. So the variance was extensive compared to any other planet at that time. And what it entailed is bringing a lot of different species that were slightly tweaked so that it would be able to all work harmoniously on this planet Earth. Then there was an animal kingdom brought in, and many, many different species were brought in, all holding a certain level of consciousness, all holding a certain specific frequency, but at the same time, all of them were slightly adjusted to be able to harmonize with not only the plant life, Gaia itself, but also with each other. And there was a huge variance and a huge multi species put into place on planet Earth. And this is why we have so many different species of what we call the animal kingdom. Now, of course, there has been some transitions that have occurred over the years. What does that mean? Some species became obsolete, or some people call it extinct and so forth because of the changes we went through. Others ones were actually turned on and brought into play. So that was that part. The oceanic kingdom, the same thing, bringing in a lot of different species there. The birds, the many species of that nature, and also reptilians at that point in time were also brought in. And when I'm talking about reptilian, I'm talking about what we harness as a species that replace the human in any way or is in the same alignment, even though it is all in the same frequency, all from source, but to play a role to complement. So all of this was put into place to complement the human experience. And that's what it was all about. So I just want to make a quick adjustment. Okay, so this was all to create an environment. So this mix of different species holding different variants of energies, and a lot of them were coming from higher vibrational consciousness, and they were all put onto planet Earth so that when the human was going to be introduced, which was in the works at that point in time that it would be designed in such a fashion that it would harmonize with all these different species. Now, prior to introducing the human being, this series, which was introduced 15,000 years ago, we've had different species, different variances that have occurred or was put onto the planet when they were retooled. We're not here to minimize and say, okay, we weren't from creator source. We're all from creator source, okay? There's nothing outside of creator source. However, the way it works, the mechanics is, it's like, let's use the example of engineers and technologists and so forth, and even other creators that work on the planet right now. Just to use that as an example. They're always studying different ways to bring in certain components to create something much more elaborate. So this is why we have been seeing our technology advancing. However, there was a back end to all of that technology stuff that had also a kickback, which wasn't really put into consideration when the physical experience was done. So how did it all come about? So there was a group of scientists, if you want to call it that, just to use names, but engineers that were experienced in creating physical forms, using codes and writing these codes and applying and utilizing different spectrums of light, because this was going to be holographic anyway, so is the planet, to design it in such a fashion that it would be able to harmonize, work, and support each other for all the species that were on the planet. But at the same time, also to be able to utilize the consciousness, the vibration, the frequencies from many, many different species at the same time. Now, when it originally was put together, it was going to be somewhat similar to the original 3 different species blend that was being used prior to this human physical form that we are all utilizing. Because the ones before that all use anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 different species that was used and modified and so forth. Well, moving forward and creating a planet that was self-evolving, and so was the organic matrix was self-evolving, that they wanted to really push the limits. And that's what they did. They pushed the limits. So not stopping at 3 inputs of 3 different species, it went basically as a baseline, excuse me, as a baseline, 12 different species, which had never been done before. And even though that was being put into place, there was a lot of adjustments that had to take place to create this physical form. So it does not actually look at the form as less than, but it actually has the enrichment and also the highest codes, in a sense, that the 12 different species that were the contributors. And I'm going to talk about that as we go along. However, the 12 different species were contributors. Now, what did they contribute? They contributed their frequency, their operating system, their encodements, what they call your genetic encodements, and their blueprints. Now, when those were utilized, they were also tapped from the experience that they were having on those various planets. And it was the highest form, period. Now, when that was put in, that's where the DNA came into play. The DNA carried this genetic operating system and encodement that represented very much the species that were the contributor. No, there was no loss in the contribution like anything else. So the genetic encodements were utilized, but there was something else that was put into place. And it didn't want to have a stagnant version of these genetic codes and contributors. So the DNA was programmed and also outfitted with telomeres. And they were also open platforms so that they would receive input from these species as they continue to evolve. Now, so the DNAs, each one kept receiving information and updates. And that's what made this progress even much more effective and quite experimental in many, many ways. by having those inputs coming in, whatever the species that were contributing had contributed because of the link to it, whatever they were experiencing, all of the consciousness they were accessing through their journey was also transmitted to this, what you call the human form that you're embodying. So that was how it came about to have the human physical form. Now, there was some experimenting and playfulness and so forth that took place within it because it needed to harmonize without impeding each other. That means all the species, because the DNA was also not only receiving updates, but it was also transmitting its blend of how it was experiencing on planet Earth, so that it was a two-way street. Now, the way it was encoded was not to dilute in any way the experience they were having as that particular species. So that means that DNA was not getting a feedback that would alter them in a way where they would not be able to function on their own terms, having their own experiential enlightenment and also evolution, but also at the same time upgrading their own operating system and not demising and compromising their physical expression. So that's how it was done. So it would receive it, but it would utilize bits and pieces of it so that it would not have the full or feedback, I guess you want to call it, so that it would not interfere with them. So you could see it stayed fairly clean so that each and every one of those species that contributed at this point in time were very clear in receiving what they were receiving from without interfering, but at the same time, we were receiving the upgrades. Now, the beauty of it, as we were receiving the upgrades, the human experience were evolving from 12 different inputs. That required this operating system that was put in place as the human experience to be able to utilize those inputs without dwarfing any part of it. But it gave the opportunity to vary, meaning that certain species would be a stronger contributor and modifier. Now, one of the things is the ratio, and this is when planet Earth was seeded. And when it was seeded, then it created the opportunity for humanity to evolve. But to create more variance at that point in time, they modified the ratios of each of the species, and some of the species took a bigger role in their contribution so that it would change the physicality some degree. It still had the basic mechanics, but it would change some of the features, it would change some of the viewpoints, or in this case, focus points from the different species. And this is why we have many different races on planet Earth, which only that represents from skin color to their operating system. Now, with those ratios, it also modified the functionality to some degree. This is the reason that some cultures, or what we call races on the human planet, kind of interpret things very differently or somewhat differently, depending on the degree, and also internalizes, and they can actually see and experience itself. Because the plan was to create a lot of variances, and by having these multiple species or variations of our human species, then each one would have a stronger connection to the various species that were the contributors. So that stayed all intact, all came together, and it started to function in such a powerful way. And it was really supporting us in a huge movement. The plan was, because there was so much upgrading happening on our solar system, the positioning of our planet, the upgrades, and also the evolutionary expression that the universe, and specifically in our case, which we had the closest connection to, was our quadrant of the galaxy. Now, the positioning of the planet kind of was like the spoke or the core of all these other planets. Now, did we interfere or in some way supersede that? No. However, we were receiving and transmitting, allowing all of the other facets to be able to express itself in its purest form, but at the same time, to be able to use planet Earth or our whole solar system as the hub. So, as the hub, there was a lot of visitations, and I know there's a lot of conversations or discoveries that different beings were on the planet at different times. Yes, because it encouraged visitations and observations. So that carried on pretty straightforward for 5,000 years, and I've talked about this many, many times. But about 10,000 years ago, when there was an offering from a Luciferian operating system from a Draconian and Anunnaki hybrid, because they're hybrids, to actually change the modification and modify the operating system. Now, they couldn't change the basic operating system because um, it was not open for that. So the platform had some openness, but not open to make that modification. So it would not lose its integrity of what it represented. However, what happened is a lot of the DNAs were turned off or turned right down so that they weren't getting upgrades in the operating system. Now, they could not interfere with the organic matrix because that was designed not to be manipulated with or played because it was connected and greatly supported by all the connecting planets that were connected to our planet. Because to understand that every single matrix, or let's call it this, right, so I don't get confusing here, every single planet has a matrix. What does the matrix do? The matrix creates the fundamental operating system that creates a form of consistency that all the players on that planet get to see and experience things in its own variance, but there's a consistency. And for it to project a planet, it requires a matrix. And so every time there's a retooling, yes, the planet itself, or which is a holographic expression from within the sourceness, there is a matrix that gets rewired or reprogrammed to host the next series of species. This happens on many, many planets because many planets do go through upgrades. And once they're done, the planets do get retooled. And as they get retooled, then they either make modification to the existing species that are there, whatever is there, or they create a new one. So this is kind of how it works. This is the mechanics of all of it. Why? Why does this all happen in the way that it does? Well, the purpose behind that, as source, we are creators. And as creators, what we do best is create. We create different playgrounds, different expressions, different channels of engagement so that it continues to expand, grow, and enlightenment. So there's no good, bad, right, wrong about any creation. Every creation is a creation. Every creation supports us in one way or another to allow us to move forward in such a powerful way. So this is the thing that we're looking at this point. So with those modifications that happened to planet Earth at this point in time 10,000 years ago, and not to be able to interfere with the matrix, then they created a new matrix. And this new matrix is what they refer to as the inverted matrix. And this is what we've been experiencing for 10,000 years. Now, the inverted matrix is no longer active, it has been turned off. So the inverted matrix at this point in time was a standalone, which meant that it was not connected to the other planets because the other planets would not support it. So that's the reason that they had to build a satellite or bring in a satellite to support that operating system of the matrix. So the inverted matrix was connected to one operating system or massive computer, if you want to call it that, and projection of satellite type of application to be able to maintain that inverted matrix. So when that came into play at this point in time, so the inverted matrix was put in, the moon was brought in, it was a massive satellite. The originators of that satellite and the occupants of that particular satellite, because there was occupants within in the moon and externally of the moon. Now, the external part, what they call the dark side, because it's a side that does not expose itself to the frequency of the light of the sun, that was purposely done so that they do not experience an upgrade, because that was one of the reasons that they had created this, what they called the Luciferian operating system. And this operating system would basically stay intact and operate in very low frequency. However, it did need feedback from the human species and from other sources to be able to keep that vibration very low. Now, here's the moon streaming all of this powerful energy to support this inverted matrix. Now, to be able to more effectively make the changes and to work much more in alignment, what occurred was that the fact that what was required at this point in time was that the fact that it could not receive those constant inputs and upgrades from the DNA. So this is why I was saying earlier that a lot of them got turned down to a minuscule amount, and some of it looked like it was all turned off completely. But none of them were 100%, but they were enough to be able to cut off any streaming and upgrades that it would receive that would upgrade us. Now, the purpose of all of that was to have this experiment within the experiment, and that experiment in the experiment was to see what was possible for the human species. Now, because the human species was revered due to the fact of its variance and its experiment and going outside of the regular limits of creation, that they wanted to see how this would be able to move forward regardless of how much cutting off and so forth. Now, the DNA still became the contributor as the base genetic encodements, and this is why the human physicality hasn't changed much in the sense of, changing its form, because those contribution. However, the form did not get a chance to upgrade, and the operating system did not get a chance to operate or upgrade, because 10 of them were so turned down, so minuscule, that very, very little to next to nothing of input was received by those particular DNAs that were connected to our brother-sister souls. At the same time, they were not receiving either. So they weren't even getting the feedback. So that was not only interfering with planet Earth's experience, but also the contributors were not receiving a feedback. So they did leave 2 of the DNAs as the primaries at that point in time active, but through filters and diminished. So those were still diminished and through filtration, and the filtration would be a superimposed operating system so that it would not get the clear streaming to the human experience because of the fact that it was not going to be able to be maintained. So that was the design of that. So when that was introduced 10,000 years ago, they watched and observed the human experience. Now, they also modified the genetic encodements and created separations. What does that mean, the separation? Well, we were at that point not receiving energy directly, because in our true design, once we understand that, is that we did not have to consume food. We did not need to do many of the maintenance stuff that we do now. And our bodies were lighter. We were able to use teleportation. We were able to use not elevation, what do you call it? I can't think of the word. Anyways, any of those things. But at the same time, it also levitate and fragment itself to be able to appear in different areas, which we already are doing more and more of, but that was limited to the soul's capacities to do that, not the body or the human entity at that point in time. So those modifications were done. However, as the experiment continued to move along, they also noticed that the souls that were coming in were already bringing a certain amount of consciousness from whatever playgrounds, because you have to understand, the body was evolving through its experience of what Gaia was experiencing and what Gaia was feeding back. When it came to the human entity, it was from all the other human entities, because everybody had a human entity at that point in time that was actually recording and advancing itself from what we call the Earth plane playground without bringing anything outside of the Earth playground. Now, of course, the human entity and the body also had the encodements and the operating system that was established, from the original, so it maintained part of that. So now to move forward even further, they noticed that even with that, with the souls coming in, that the evolutionary component was stimulated. Now, let me bring up one last thing before I forget, and that was one of the things that they did with the inverted matrix. Everything worked backwards. So, besides cutting off our energy source, from the sun, from the water, from the air, from the presence of planet Earth, that all of a sudden we had these second and third parties that we needed to introduce to our bodies. And this is where the food component became a necessity. Now, we had the capacities to process fruit, which were, we had a strong connection to that to feed our bodies with experiences, really, and consciousness. It wasn't really to fuel the body so that the body would continue to restore because we were receiving that directly. But when that modification was done 10,000 years ago, then all of a sudden the operating systems changed. And now we needed a second and third party. What is a second party? Well, the second party is that we needed to consume plant life to be able to nurture ourselves and to be able to get the energies. Now, if you look at a plant, where's the plant get its energy? It gets it from the earth, it gets it from the air, it's getting it from the sun. Now, of course, each plant has its own, genetic encodements, and there's an offering of that. So all of a sudden, we were using that. A third version came up later on, which now was a third step, which now all of a sudden required us to consume. It wasn't a requirement, but it was modified to do so, where all of a sudden you had to consume animals to get that energy. So if you really look at the steps of that, now you're consuming an animal that gets its energy, its nourishments from the plant life, and in some, with the modification, and then also where's the plant life getting it? So you have three steps, but getting it from the sun, the water, the air, and from the earth itself, or Gaia. So you see how two steps were removed. Now, those removals of those two steps also altered our capacity to take in the most current state of being. Now, the modification also provided opportunities, or I shouldn't say opportunity, but also involved the changing of the species. So the animal kingdoms that did not eat each other all of a sudden required to eat each other. And not only that, and that's certain species were modified to that, but then the other species were consuming plant life. Now, all of a sudden, there was a requirement for that to be there, because that was also, they were getting the energies from the sun, from the water, from the air, from Gaia itself, and it didn't require to consume food. However, it could eat plant. There was no animals at that point in time that ate other animals. That was not even in the operating system. But they would be able to eat plant life, and at that plant life would only be as part of a connection to Gaia and its offering and those particular sentient beings that were the offering at this point in time to kind of facilitate the upgrades. But that was all optional, the same way it was optional for us to eat food, because we would, consume fruit, and that we would receive the encodements. Now, of course, the fruit wasn't just picked unripened; it would be the fruit that was put onto that the plant offered by putting it on the ground, so that they would drop from the trees or the different plants so we could consume it. Now, the biodegradableness about those plants were not as rapid as it is now, because at that point in time it would stay intact and hold that particular energy without rotting, sort of thing, to give you that as an understanding. So that was the plant life and all of that stuff that was coming into. Now, to understand then the insect world, which was modified, and also all the different species, the oceanic, because the oceanic did not eat other fish. They basically didn't require anything, but at times they could have an experience through eating plant life that the ocean was providing. They weren't eating each other. That was never the case. Now, some other species were introduced or morphed into that so that they would be able to do it. So their operating system modified also. And the same thing, the insect world. The insect world was, complementary in a way where it was in our environment. Now, of course, we had a few extra species that were plugged in that weren't originally from the original plant. The species that bite and cause discomfort to the human species. A lot of them weren't there, and the ones that were there would not, interfere with the human experience. It was all complementary. So at that point in time, before the modification, you can go out and sleep in the forest completely naked and in the midst of everything, and nothing would harm you because all of it was harmonious. That was the huge difference between then and then when it was modified 10,000 years ago. Regardless of all the stuff coming in, we also noticed that there was still an evolutionary component happening. So that's when they decided that they needed something that would utilize the inverted matrix and this energies coming from the moon to be able to keep humanity in a kind of a reduced state. So that's when they designed this artificial intelligence they called the ego, because the ego never really existed before. And the ego was plugged into the left brain, which was an operating system. So the right brain still received the information of what was coming from the body, from the human entity, the soul, and also other souls that were connected, and also different species, and also information that was coming in from the DNA, and then of course the information from all the chakras, because at that point in time the chakras got fragmented because there was not even need for the chakras, but that was put into place. But that was a modification that was done not from the original race that came in, not the original race, but the race that came in afterwards to make those modifications. It was from the original one that they came in and adjusted some of that. So we ended up having those chakras, and the chakras are transmitter receivers. Each of the chakras are connected to different points of receiving information on the planet itself. And also at the same time what comes in. So when you're tuning into your heart, you're basically tuning into your soul. When you're tuning into your solar plexus, you're tuning into your what do you call it? Human entity. Sometimes I forget the words. But the human entity, and then of course the sacral would connect to other humans, and of course the root chakra was not only connected with Gaia, but the whole human expression at this point in time. The throat chakra was used as a form of creation, and it would shape what was there by using sound. And the third eye was the connection to many other souls that were not directly linked to our soul family or our oversoul, but to receive information from other souls from any dimension. Really, it was not limited to that. And then of course our crown chakra was also there as a transmitter receiver from source itself. So all of the chakras played a role in how we experienced ourselves and moved forward. So now I'm sharing all of this so that we're moving into the understanding of what's really taking place. Now, one of the marvels with the human experience or the human physicality or expression of the physicality, because of all its variance, regardless of all the modification that occurred, including the ego, because if you really look at the ego itself, it does create quite a bit of a challenge. But what is the challenge about? It's really basically creating dialogue that actually refers to the inverted matrix: right, wrong, good, bad, separation, judgment, all of that stuff that was what the inverted matrix was plugging into as part of our experience. Now, the first intent when it was brought in, it was saying, okay, well, there may have been what you can call a malicious intent at that point in time, but it wasn't really a malicious intent, because that's, when we once understand it, that we're all source, and that we understand that even the Luciferian operating system was something that was an experiment that was totally, not opposite, but greatly disconnected from the whole, even though it's still part of the whole, but it used very little input, and wanted to go into what an illusionary power state, control state, and so forth. And that's what we've been experiencing at this point in time. But that's all unraveling right now, and this is why the chaotic part is taking place. So with all of that taking place, and the ego being the storyteller and actually creating polarity and accentuating the polarities and kind of shifting your viewpoint and everything else, it continued to evolve. It became a little bit more powerful. It became a little bit more ingrained in our experience, and it started to be much more powerfully shaped. Now, the ego itself required a lot of input coming from the moon, coming from the inverted matrix, but at the same time, it also required stimulation. And a lot of the stimulation was not adequate enough, especially as we continue to move along, from just those inputs. Now, of course, those inputs are not there anymore because the inverted matrix is gone. The moon's no longer transmitting those codes at this point in time. So the egos are on their own and they're kind of communicating with other egos. But at the same time, the artificial intelligence we call the ego itself, it actually was designed so that it would evolve and creating these fluctuations. However, it was losing its capacity, it was losing its effectiveness, and this is why we shifted into the next mode, which was allowed at that point in time, because we collectively allowed, and that was to use the media, to use all types of stimulation between music, visual, um, educational systems, and all the other systems that we have in place that were all representation of the inverted matrix because it was none of it was natural. So those started to become inputs, and this is the reason why, we were educated about being afraid, not, rights and wrongs, good and bad, they're separate. We have to survive. We have to do all of these things. So all of those things were coming into play, and but those things were not ever natural. But at the same time, it was necessary, and that's what a lot of them. The media. I'm talking about movies. I'm talking about shows. We're talking about news, of course, and we're talking about the music medias, and even that was changed to stir up not only emotions, because that's what the ego does very well. And we've also evolved into the to the emotional component, because our original emotions was programmed as the original, but those emotions did not have the polarity emotions that we're experiencing right now. Like it did experience joy and elation elation. What, can't you think of the word right now? Oh, it's okay. Feeling that in one way or another that the excitement, the playfulness, and all of that stuff became in, so that because the emotions involves the body, and it's a connection that requires the body to experience that, so we would feel that. But then when the modification came in and all that stuff, and the artificial intelligence being the ego came into place, then we started to create polarities, and that's why we started having, first we had sadness, and we have fear, and we have not good enough, that whatever. It created many, 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 many different polarities. And all of a sudden, the emotions were a contribution and an enhancement of an experience that was free and wide open. But what the ego has done, the artificial intelligence, for the longest period of time, it actually took the emotions, besides creating the polarity emotion, and it utilized those emotions to actually control us. Emotions were never there to control us. The emotions were just to heighten and enhance our experience, but those emotions were also categorized from a higher frequency rather than the emotions that we've been feeling, and that is like fear, anger, and all of those things that are very low vibration, where you see the separation, where you're fighting each other and doing all of those things that normally was not our normal part of it. So that brings us to where we are right now. Right now, I mean, there was a powerful decision made a while back, prior to 1987, to actually start to upgrade and to unplug all the things that were put in 10,000 years ago and upgrade it. Because it wasn't just what was put in 10,000 years ago, it was upgraded 5,000 years ago, 3,500, 1,500 years ago, and some 350 years ago, where there are all the different stages that, that particular species came in and modified things and plugged in certain components. Now, to be able to have people to control it, or in this case, these particular human species, they created hybrids. And what they did is they took the human and they actually they took their genetic encodements and sliced it in half, sort of thing, and saying, okay, that only has half capacity, and then we're going to put in this other operating system that the Draconians and Anunnaki at different times contributed that was modified anyways. So all of a sudden we had these hybrids, which, a lot of them are still around. More of them are unplugged or becoming unplugged, which, they've taken leadership roles. They've taken in, what they call the shadow governance and stuff working on the back end, because all of the stuff that we're experiencing right now, or many of the things that we're experiencing, they were able to be the boots on the ground, like Todd likes to say at times, that we're able to control the medias and the different things, because those were all at the human level component, and using those types of technologies to kind of create an environment that was beneficial for that particular agenda. Now, the agenda, as much as it looks like it was there to destroy the human experience, the capacity was there, but that was not the original intent. It was create a hybrid version of the human experience, take only the strongest ones, and be able to establish something that was a regime that was, you know, robotic in a sense and was not able to do the conscious. But that was not an agreement that was made by all the different levels. It was not an agreement that Gaia was going to support any longer. There was no more agreement from the human entity to support it. From the souls coming in, they weren't ready to support that any longer. And then the minds, which is a combination of all of that stuff that was operating our human experience, was basically now being tuned so that it would not take those levels of input. So those are some just to kind of set the stage, or not even set the stage, but kind of give you, you know, a step-by-step part of what's happening. Of course, like I was saying, in 1987 there was a modification, then there was, at the end of 2012 going into 2013 was the next modification, and now we have this other modification in 2020, which basically was all the upgrades and the energies that supported the upgrades on the platforms and Gaia, and also the codes that are coming from the sun and the energies coming from the sun to re-stimulate, reactivate, and so forth. A lot of the DNAs are getting reactivated to a certain degree, and it's going to be staged because it's just opening the floodgates sort of thing, you know, and having, you know, 12 full stream input when we've experienced something different would be a huge shock, and it could cause a lot of shutting down at this point in time. So it has to be done incrementally, and that's what's happening right now. But the increments are getting faster and faster and faster, and the upgrades are stepping up further and further. So they're not, you know, spread out for a really super long period of time, as it used to be before. So here we are. You know, now it looks like we're in a war. You know, conscious and unconscious, and you know, the control structures and our freedom. And that's really just to accentuate the polarity for us to make a choice that, you know, we're getting into a saturation point of that part of it, and then be able to shift into that, and which many souls have been doing. And if you notice, some of you have started to what they call awaken and become more conscious of your environment and playground and whatever else been playing out at this point, so that we were able to, you know, more and more contributors and more active beings or souls, not souls, let's call it human beings, that have come into play. So, with all of that, as we continue to speed up, we're basically at this point in time, you know, disconnecting from, as I said earlier, that the inverted matrix has been unplugged. So we're really just getting reconditioned to connect to the organic matrix, even though that was never fully disconnected anyways. But the streaming from that is modifying and upgrading bit by bit. A lot of the, like I said, the DNAs that were dormant and stuff that are starting to come back online bit by bit, and that is shifting things. So we've made the agreement on a collective scale that we were going to allow ourselves to be upgraded back to where we intended. So we do have the two platforms, like I said. The first platform is to be able to be in 12th dimension. Sorry, to utilize up to 12 dimensions, but to have a playground where we are hosting an organic third dimension and an organic fifth dimension. Fourth is kind of a bridging, but it's not really used anymore, and so it's not something that we are, you know, there's emphasis put on it at any point in time. A lot of the fourth dimensional stuff is utilized at this point in time, not as the platform, but as a source of seeing what was put into place, because most of the creations were done in fourth dimension. And the beings were using fourth dimensional consciousness and fourth dimensional energies. Not that that's a negative energy, but they were using those tools, because tools are tools. How you use the tools is what really is the difference. So they wanted to use that. While we were going through that 10,000 year period, yes, we were operated by the inverted matrix. We were operated by the artificial intelligence we call the ego, but we were also at the same time, when we were going through that journey, we were utilizing a lot of those encodements that were plugged in to actually not really see ourselves for who we were. So what we call a sleep state or unconscious state, you know, was utilized quite heavily along the way. My background changed? Okay. Let's bring it back. All right. So, was there anything else you wanted to share before I move on? Okay, because you got it all figured out. I'm waiting for you to. Okay. Okay. So you're getting a lot of information here of how the makeup and all of that stuff is coming in. Now, the choice that we made was to more and more disconnect from all of that inverted stuff. So we're starting to connect more and more. And when I mean connect, we're actually using more of the streaming, not only from our DNA, but a little clearer version of all the chakras, but at the same time, more of the organic matrix. Now, when the inverted matrices come in, a lot of people have this misconception that we were living 3D, a third dimensional consciousness. What we didn't. We started off 5,000 years ago for a period of 5,000 in organic 3D with the intent to go all the way to ninth dimensional consciousness. And just to clarify, when we're talking about dimensional consciousness, it's a little bit different than what we call density. But the consciousness was to bring a further awareness of our sourceness and of our capacities as sourceness and the consciousness of sourceness, and start to apply it so that we would upgrade the human experience and also the human playground, because that's what it is. So as that was coming in, as we started to look at all of that, we wanted more of that to come into place. So we're just starting to stream in more of what the organic matrix. So what we were really living at that point in time is not organic 3D, which is what we've now have as platform, totally retooled and refined in a way, and organic 5D. We were actually working in what we call the inverted 3D and also 2D. Now the difference is the matrix itself made everything backwards, so it actually made it very difficult to evolve. But the inverted 3D and the inverted 2D worked everything backwards too. But what it did is it, instead of assisting us to evolve, it actually assisted us to devolve. And that's what we did, is we experienced a de-evolution rather than an evolution. Now, of course, we're trying to make movement forward in a big way so that we're moving much more powerfully. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
Beatrice is asking a question. I'll ask this one first, Beatrice. She's asked a few. What is the percentage of humans already totally disconnected from 2D, inverted 3D, and fully in organic 3D and 5D, and how many still playing the old world? If you can answer that, I don't know.
Yeah, it's still when we're talking about full disconnect, the percentage is quite low still. Because as much as the prominent operating system is organic 3D and organic 5D, they still are purging out programs. They're purging out old constructs, old labels, old definitions of themselves. And this is why we're going through all this purging stuff that we're experiencing, clearing out these operating systems, because these operating systems were done that. Now, so what's happening is we've already decided that we're going to play in organic 3D or organic 5D, and that is our home base. But at the same time, we can move into 5D if you're in 3, and vice versa. Just get in. But at the same time, because of our operating system and the ego still operating, the ego still functions in inverted 3D and 2D. The media is still pushing that narrative and that frequency and so forth. So it's giving us the opportunity to saturate and then start to unplug. What is changing is the amount of energy and amount of resources that we're using from that inverted matrix, inverted 3D, 2D programming and so forth is decreasing. And this is one of the reasons that all these powerful bursts of energies that have been coming through at this point in time to really assist us. And that's why it's getting also easier and easier for us to be able to move and shift outside of the locked-in patterns that we are. Because before it used to be a lot more difficult because everything's still supported in a very powerful way from those lower vibrations to be able to look at an experience that we may have had, a label that we may have had, a definition that we may have had. And what do I mean by a label? You have an experience and you label it as good, bad, right, wrong. The definition, you would have an experience and you define that experience as you. So you're utilizing that. You're taking the definition and you're plugging it in. It's like, this is who I am, whatever that may be. I'm a loser. I'm this. I'm that. Or, I'm just a feeble human. What am I supposed to do? Whatever it is. Those are the definitions. And most of those definitions were created through different experiences that the ego's labeled. or in this case, gave definitions to. The labeling part, is again, good, bad, right, wrong, and plugging labels, and then at the same time we were able to use the other programs accordingly. So all of that is changing. So in a sense, we're able to move it through it a lot quicker. We don't even have to do the regressional stuff to that degree any longer. So if you were at the workshop 2 days ago, we did talk about a new way to move through it, to be able to deprogram. So the thing is, the faster you deprogram, the quicker you get to move out of those labels, definitions, and those belief systems and perceptions and so forth. The more your focus is going to be either in organic 3D and organic 5D. Now, organic 3D is temporary. Of course, it's only 15 years. We've already used up more than half of the first year. But also the inverted matrix operating system, even though it doesn't exist any longer, but the ego and the inverted 3D and 2D, we have until the end of 2022 to be able to purge all of that out, so that in fact that when we are starting 2023, we're no longer driven by the ego or the inverted 3D and 2D operating system. So it's giving us the opportunity. Now, of course, there's going to be souls and bodies and physicalities and so forth that may choose not to go the full extent. They only do part of it, and then they may unplug or whatever it is. There's lots of stuff. There's a lot of exchanging that would happen, and that's already happening right now. There's so many different things to look at that, just looking at it on the surface is just minuscule in comparison to all the stuff that's really, really taking place in a big way. Let's call it that. Okay, so looking at all of this now, the question keeps coming up. Okay, well, what species are we made up of? What are we? Who are these contributors of these DNA? Because we have 12 DNA. Now, some people only have as low as 9, and some have up to 14. The 14 is a very, very small amount, and the same thing with 9. But the average is about 12. Pretty well, the majority of the population is 12. Now, the reason that the 9 was in, they wanted to carry a very much more specific energy, and so their ratio was more of the of those 9 contributors because they came here. And some of you may feel that way because you've come here and you feel quite foreign. And then the same thing with the ones that have taken on an extra couple of DNAs. Now, the only reason they would have taken an extra DNA, a couple of DNAs, because those particular DNA operating systems was more conducive to facilitate with the changes. So it's really just being used for the changes that is taking place rather than what's really happening at this point. Okay. Just give me a second here. Can you say no to that banner so we don't interfere? Okay, great. There's a couple of adjustments we'll have to make at some point here. You probably didn't see it, so that's okay. We didn't want our transmission to be interfered with. Okay, so at this point in time, when we're looking at it and say, okay, what's the makeup in? And I know some people have been asking for a while because I've been talking about it for a while, and it always seemed like it wasn't time to do so. Now, I will share what the makeup is. I'm not going to get into the details of what each contribution provides because we wanted to give time for us to activate our superhuman because that's what the whole thing is about, accessing your superhuman. Now, before I get into that, should I show first and then talk about the superhuman? Yeah, why not? What do you think? You're the boss. I'm just following your instructions, girl. Okay, so let's bring this in. So that's us. That's male and female. I mean, we've used the male physicality. We didn't want to use something that didn't represent who we are, but in fact, it's not one or the other. It's the same for all. Okay. Again, the ratios are slightly different, male and female, when it comes to the frequencies that are coming in from the different DNAs, and then at the same time, the different races that we have on the planet. Different skin color, different operating system. Because it's not only just the skin color and their operating system, how they see things, feel things are a little bit different. Now, there will be more harmonious balancing that occurs, so there's not about any of the stuff about one life matters over the other. None of that stuff will come into play because, we all came here to play and we've all taken turns to play different roles and so forth. So here we are. And at this point in time, the reason I was saying that we're superhumans because, in fact, we have tremendous amount of capacities and capabilities that supersede much of what is available in other playgrounds, and we're not utilizing it. And that was purposely that we didn't utilize it. Um, and then there's a lot of people that think that the human experience is a minimalistic experience. It is a weaker experience. It's not. In fact, it's contrary because, in fact, you're using a lot. Now, of course, it's going to continue to upgrade as we go along. So this is our DNA, what it looks like, and of course, you got the different colors and so forth. So each of these DNAs, which we have 12, but we don't have just 12. I'm talking about the average. We just don't have 12. We have many replicated versions of 12. They're all the same. So the body has a lot of DNA, but at the same time, 12 different DNAs, 12 transmitters, receivers, and of course the telomeres that are connected to it, and we don't have the telomeres connected to this. So then we have primary contributors and secondary contributors. So the reason I say primary and secondary, they all are part and instrument of our operating system, but to create an opportunity where certain species would be a little bit more powerful contributor only because of what the experiment. They've arranged the ratios at different points and saw that, okay, this would be the most ideal. Now, of course, like I said, a lot of them are not really super active at this point in time. So this is what's coming back online. So when we ask and say, okay, what's the main, the primary contributors? Primaries meaning that they have the higher ratio. So we have Pleiadians, Sirians, Arcturians, Lemurians, and reptilians. And you go, oh my goodness, reptilians. How did that come in? Well, a lot of people believe the fact that the reptilians are negative beings and so forth. Reptilians are quite evolved, and were quite evolved. And what we call the Anunnaki Draconians are an extension of reptilian, but they are hybrid versions of it that actually did not continue to evolve, tuned itself down to hold a certain operating system, and then some engineers worked into creating this idea of plugging in what they call a Luciferian operating system, which basically does everything an opposite in the sense of, self-destruct in a way. So these are the main. So each one contributes their own evolvement and experience and so forth. So what we're kind of getting is the highlight of all of these races. Now, some of you have a stronger connection to different ones, so that's why the ratios change. They're still primary. It doesn't really change in that factor, but there's other ratios, so I mean other levels of contribution, meaning that you're tapping more of those genetic encodements to be utilized. Now, of course, as some of these come more active within ourselves, we feel more, how can I call it, much more at home with that particular species because that one is supplying a certain frequency coming in, and it's a recognition that takes place. So this is saying, okay, well, a lot of people involved with the Pleiadians, Sirians, Arcturians, Lemurian, and Reptilian. Now, all of these are contributing to us, but not only contributing, but are also working with us and assisting us in its true design and in its true form. Now, they're also the same species that are working with us on our planet, and this is why a lot of the ships that are out there and a lot of the visitations that we have, involve these particular species. Now, when we're talking about some of the Lemurians, they're in the inner Earth part, so there's a group of species there, but they also have other planets too that they're occupying. Even though when it was put on the planet Earth and it was utilized as planet Earth at that point in time, it a certain amount of them did not leave or become extinct in any way. From the Lemurians, we went into the Arcturians because the Lemurians were the original design, and then it kind of dwarfed and split up and created the Arcturian version of it. And this is the later version that came into play. But at the same time, they all contribute to the degree that supports our journey. So now it comes to the secondaries. We're looking at the secondaries. So the secondaries are made up of the Greys, Argarthians, Elohims, Vegans, Adron, how do you pronounce Andromedans, Yael, and the Nordics. Those are secondary contributors. So they're contributing a little bit less, but they're still the makeup of our physicality. And of course, a lot of those things have changed. Just to use if you know Bashar, he basically channels a version of himself that is in this. And then, of course, we have all the different. Now, you have to be a vegan to become a vegan. No, I'm just kidding. So all of these are also contributors at this point in time. And I know sometimes we say the Greys are negative. Well, they're not. In fact, the Greys are quite evolved, and they work with us quite extensively too. However, we're used to seeing the ones that are represented as Greys, but they're not really the true Greys. They were the modified version of the Greys, so like a hybrids. But in essence, just because they look somewhat there doesn't mean that they're exactly that. So these are your makeup. So the primaries and the secondaries, and all of them are contributing to our experience. Now, as we go along, the beauty of all of this is that we have the capacity to alter accessibility. I'm just drawing here, just for the sake of drawing. I got to play with my pencil. So that means that different stages in your life, as you want to utilize different expressions, you can tap in any of these contributors a little bit more so that it becomes, I missed these two? How could I do that? Got to keep it balanced. You can tap into more of the different species to allow you to evolve or to utilize any part of it. Because of the fact that we are we have a lot of variants of ourselves, and we have a lot of versions that are, none of these are actually dominate our operating system. They basically contribute. So we have the genetic codes and whatever else for the operating system. So that's that. So now when I said about the 9, there are some humans that have eliminated or are the physical forms do not represent all the different species, but that's because they want to focus on some key species because they're of the role that they're playing. So some of the species that have, some of the humans that have come onto the planet that are playing, what are some of those? Not the there's crystalline, there's rainbow, there's indigos, there's what's the other one? Indigo. Yeah, there's quite a few different. And they would just adjust accordingly to those frequencies, because then they're receiving much more information, updates, and so forth that would be much more supportive of what they're choosing to do. Now, you have to understand what's been happening for quite a few years is that we have souls that are new. And when I say new, they've never been on planet Earth. And they may have a lot of experience in one of these categories. Now, all of them have had different experiences, but at certain points, some of them may have specialized, or because, let me clarify something. When people say, I want to go home, okay, or, because of the fact that they're playing the game here and it looks very challenging, and, I'm in the same boat at times, I get to experience that and feel that, but then I have to remind myself that, we have come here to play a very specific role, and we're going to stick around until they're all finished. So, and then of course we're going to look at, the benefits that is acquired by being on this type of playground with these particular physicalities and what it can provide. Because it's quite unique in a way, but at the same time it's quite powerful too. So they will, some of the souls may be specialized in any of these. And so they'll come in and they'll say, well, I'm a Syrian. I'm just giving you an example. Let me take this out. I'm going to change my color. Okay. So they may say, okay, I'm a Syrian. What does that mean? That means that they've gained a lot more experience than some of these other planets, where they have, in one way or another, created as a home base, saying, I'm very familiar to the Syrian or Palladian or any of these other ones here way of life. And so they would hold a certain amount with a little bit of emphasis on that particular species. I'm just using Syrian now, just as a, and they will hold that particular vibration a little bit more intensified so that they can bring much more clearly, from a soul perspective, that advancement. Now, most souls have had not only these variants, but many, 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 many other variances that exist. So this is why when we say home, because realistically, where is home? Home is where you are, but the home is source. And you're in source, but you're having an expression that seems outside of source, but because the playground's a playground. Okay? So when we're looking at all of this, they say, well, I want to go home. And there's many of you that feel that way because it seems challenging. And I can understand that, especially if your energies are shifting. And that creates much more observation of the polarity. And the polarity becomes much more accentuated, but it also becomes more challenging. But that's just a crossover. It's not going to be there like that for a long period of time. So it's not a matter of enduring it, it's to play with it. And this is the key. That's why I use the word play a lot, because you've come here to play through this. So even though that you're coming in from a Syrian or Palladian or Reptilian or Lemurian or Turian or any of these other ones here, and the other thing too is that some of these are actually working with us more closely. Sometimes some of you are practitioners and working with energy. Now, I know the Elohims work on very much on the body construct, and they help very much on that. And they're good for scanning physicalities and can look at operating systems. The Yaelas actually bring a little bit more consciousness and is very vibrational focused. So it actually has capacities to create through vibrations a lot easier because it has specialized in that for a very long time. So a lot of times when we're connecting that, and this is why when Bashar shares stuff, he does transmit a lot about vibration and frequency and all of that stuff because they specialize in creating through that. Now we all do, but some do, put a little bit more emphasis on that. The Nordics are carry a strong, determined stature energetically and also in its integral part. So it really, at that point in time, it's, and you have to understand all of these have different levels of playfulness and seriousness. Unfortunately, a lot of them carry a seriousness because we don't have the same level of playness. But when you blend it all together, that's why humanity can be much more playful. So anyways, that's just to give you a little insight. I may elaborate a little more at some point. Then I did talk about 12, and then there's a couple of other species that are also contributors. These species also are very prominent in a different universe, in a sense. It is a parallel universe in a sense because even in my own particular experience, my soul is coming from another universe that has already gone through some of these changes and experiments and so forth, even though it was involved with the construct. We're not talking about Frank, we're just talking about the soul. So what are we playing with? The additional contribution are Solarians and Lyrans. So even though these are small numbers that are involved, they are involved on planet Earth on different levels. But at the same time, you may not have a direct DNA connection to them, but at the same time, they may still communicate with you at different levels. So there are, and these two are connected to mine because I have 14 DNA strands, and there are some other ones that do also. And like I said, it can go the highest 14. I haven't seen anything higher than that yet, but it's a possibility at some point as we continue to evolve, and then as low as 9. And 9 is a handpick from that. I don't remember seeing any of them that was there, but then I didn't go in digging deeper. I've known this information for a long time, but it was not allowed to be shared until just recently, so here we are. I wanted to do a whole episode covering that with all of the strengths and capacities that each one offers, which we'll do at some point. But I just wanted to give you that as a base. Now, what is this superhuman thing? Okay, there we go.
Somebody's asking, I think it's Cameron, if people have fairy DNA.
Fairy? What does that mean?
Yeah,
You're the expert
you
here.
know the fairies are. Is that a something that people would get DNA from, or
Okay,
are they just
so
another species that we cohabitate with?
okay, what fairies are? Fairies are a still a combination of different parts, but they don't take on a form like we do. So their job is to play on the different realms, like planet Earth as one of them. They do move around from planet to planet. They don't take on the same type of form where it's much more engaged, so they can pop in and out. So they're still a combination of different species, much less. Usually there's only a couple of them, but they will focus on non-form while working with form, meaning physicalities on the plane. Some of the so-called what they call fairies and angelic realms, they're basically souls that have not taken on a solid physical form representation. The holographic is much more tuned back, but they doesn't mean they don't have resources. They're just not wanting to incarnate to the same degree. So uh, can you take that? Uh, some will take some of the characteristics of what you call the fairy or angelic realm. Some of the souls are souls that have been a fairy, what we call fairy, for a very long time and has a lot of experience of moving from planet to planet and all that it's gained from that. And the same thing with the angelic realms, because there are some angelics or angels, so called, that do not take on a form but have chosen for the last while to adjust their frequency and to take on as a drop in. Usually they're not incarnating, they're usually drop in because they're not so keen on starting from diaper stage or child, but they'll drop in at different stages and plug in and have an offering of that point that takes place. So that's kind of how it works with that. Hopefully that supplies Cameron enough. Okay. I don't want to get too much longer because of the fact that we want to do a process too. And I was going to talk a little bit more about the superhuman, but you have a question?
Quickly, you can just say yay or nay.
Hmm.
Are there some souls here? Terry is asking, fresh from source, first incarnation ever.
Yes, yes, yes. Um, those souls were basically not, you have not taken on different forms, have wanted to maintain a complete wide open spectrum. However, for it coming here, it had to tune down a lot to be able to say, okay, I still have that full spectrum as source without having experience. So the thing is, most of those souls have not had experiences on other planets, so haven't gained experientially enriched. So when they come on planet Earth, it's even much more complicated than, say, for example, let me give you an example. So if you have a Pleiadian, okay, who's never been on planet Earth, okay, a soul that has a lot of experience as a Pleiadian. Now, of course, as soon as they come into a physical form, it has all these different parts of contributions. But as a Pleiadian, the soul has experiences. Its majority of its experience as a Pleiadian. That means that it incarnated over and over again with Pleiadians, or maybe have only a few times, but have much less on other ones. Um, because you can have a soul that have incarnated 40 times. Just give you an example, just so you get an understanding. But each time it's been on a different planet, on a different dimensional component. Some of those are called planet jumpers. And then, of course, then they got a little excited about playing in the Palladium realm. I'm just using this as an example. So they've incarnated a few times to see how much progress they can make in a Palladian physicality with the Palladian consciousness. So then when they come in and embody a human body, as much as they have those inputs, their experience skill set is more into the Palladian. So they will kind of bring some of that offering and experience and skills and whatever vibrations there, which is great because it also helps stimulate others that are on the planet that are a combination. So they play that. Now, then there are some souls that actually never incarnated. And when I say coming from source itself, and there's a few like that too, that they've held the space, and they chose to take on a signature and then incarnate. Now, they do come from a soul family in a sense, and when I say from a soul family, they would connect to a soul family, even though they weren't originally from that soul family, in a sense, because sometimes the merging allows other exchange, but that's not as common. So that one would take on a source, will maintain its sourceness, which is many, many dimensional, not many dimensional, but many, many species combined, but it kind of governs how it wants to use. So it would take on an existing physicality, and sometimes it comes from birth. It's not as common. I mean, it's quite rare, and they're not quite skilled with that. So there's a lot of learning that goes on, and then they highly rely on a lot of this input. I have to do it one at a time here. A lot of input from the different sources, and then if they take on that, then at the same time they'll have to update themselves. But you have to understand the beauty here is that the human body has a lot of consciousness, what we call the innate consciousness of the body, which is an extension of the planet, and the planet has a lot of incarnations, billions and billions of incarnations in and out, in and out, in and out, and it's gained a lot of experiences. The same thing with the human entity. The human entity is reincarnated on planet Earth, so a lot of these souls that are strictly from source, for example, have not had any experience. They rely very highly. Now, everybody to some degree relies on the human entity and the body to kind of bring them up to date and how it is to play on this playground. They may some of the angelic realms or some of the guides, because there are also guides, which is something I didn't cover yet, but the guides also choose not to take on form or has had form before and has been observer. So a lot of times when they do take on a form, they've observed, but they still rely on the human body to get comfortable with the body and how it functions, but at the same time also the human playground, which the human entity is very powerful. There's much more reliance on the human entity and the body for the souls that come in, specifically, unless there's a soul that's been in and out so many times and has gained a lot of experience, but it still relies on that. Because the human entity also carries the skill set of being a human. Not only its experience, but it's also skill set. So a lot of times when we're talking about, kids coming on or humans all of a sudden have this new gift comes in, they can play music, they can do that, and then never studied or something like that. That's usually the human entity which will activate some part of that experience that they may have had in a previous life or several lives, because the human entity a lot of times likes to promote how do you call it, evolution or technical advancement. Because the souls come and go all the time and all of that stuff, there's something that wants to evolve the human species, so the human entity plays a big, powerful role with that. Now, the human entity itself is kind of a soul, but it's got a lot of human experiences, and it's only incarnating on planet Earth, and it has a lot of feedback from all of this because it's utilized at different times. Now, of course, it's still been minimized for a long, long period of time. Okay, hopefully I've covered that. So what's this superhuman? Well, the thing is, we're pretty powerful beings, and we discount the capacities, capabilities of what the human spirit, the human being is. Not only because of what the physicality can do, but also the amount of experience it can provide in form through all the different stages that Gaia has gone through and all the different souls that have come and gone. So in a way, we are using a small bit of our experience. Now, like I said to you, the first 5,000 years, we were operating in our true design. So what's happening now is a lot of that truer design is being not only upgraded, but is being reactivated. So that makes us even much more powerful as creators, but also as the experiencer. Now, many of us have come here and wanted to play the role of saying, okay, I want to go into the deepest sleep state and then be able to advance powerfully accordingly. So, and many are being activated. So what does that mean? That means you unplug a certain amount of your capacities and consciousness from a soul level. their souls are coming in that are quite advanced. And when I say advanced, that means they've had a lot of experiences in different forms. So they're coming in advanced, but they're not going to utilize it because it would be too difficult for them to do so. So they hold off. Now there are souls like myself and others that have, started to turn a lot of that stuff back on. In some cases, have turned it on, a couple of decades ago, but at the same time, still holding a certain space and whatever else for whatever was going. So what I'm talking about when it comes to the superhuman is just the fact that, yeah, we have all of this contribution, we have all of this skill set, all this energies and spectrums and so forth, while we're also upgrading. What we do and see that somehow we need to be saved, or in some way that, something has to come and change things for us, it doesn't work that way. And that's an agreement we made, that we wanted to be participating. And that participation means that you are, having the experience, transforming the different experience, utilizing different access points from all of the different resources, and also the human entities experience and the body sharing from Gaia, and to be able to change. So all the changes that we're going right now is not outside of us. It's another version of us that's maybe contributing to a certain degree, and including the pulses of energy coming in and so forth, but it's really us. And that's why I want to bring it back to the point where we're the ones that are unrolling and unfolding and opening up this state of being as a true human. And the true human is another uh, level of expression and experience that is much more than what we've experienced for the last 10,000 years. Many of us, a small number in comparison to the bulk of the population on the planet, are realizing that more and more, and some have been dwelling into that and seeing the capacities and seeing the capabilities and seeing and experiencing that. And even though the choice is made to roll it out bit by bit, they are much more active to be part of that transformation. Now, there's nobody outside of or another version of ourselves that is on planet Earth that in one way or another is not contributing. Some are contributing, or a large portion is contributing in the old world, so that we have our saturation point and create a shift, and others are forerunners that are actually totally designing it, and then there's some in the middle that are kind of playing the role back and forth, and eventually choosing to go into the true operating system of organic 3D and organic 5D. And that's what we're doing at this point. Was there any questions on your end? Okay. Is there anything you want to throw in that I missed completely? And all right, can I go home now? Oh, we are home. I want to go home. No. I mean, I've heard this a lot from different people. I want to go home, and that's because we're judging and comparing what we have here and what they may have experienced as fragments of those memories, or those indications of the memories of what it was playing on a different playground. All playgrounds are amazing. Yeah, planet Earth, because of what it actually provides, and the different levels of potentiality it has, and the variance, and the way it's designed and structured to evolve in a very powerful way. It's very appealing, and this is why the population increased and many, many more souls want to be participating, especially now in the last several years, or a few decades now, but it's moved up even further now. And I'm not saying there's just as many leaving, but at the same time, there's such an excitement to catch this wave, because this is kind of something that is not really that available anywhere else. So this is why this is why it's so exciting to come here on the planet. But we lose the excitement. Well, what makes us lose the excitement is that we start focusing on what the ego has to generate, and the ego doesn't want us to realize how powerful we are. And this is why it uses labels, uses definitions, and so forth, to kind of dictate less than the superhuman part, because we are superhumans. Now, I use that word. If you decide to become a superhuman, we are going to be arranging to give you a cape that says SH that you can utilize. And so you can walk around with your cape and leotards and say, hey, I'm superhuman. Just teasing. But at the same time, not to interfere with the idea of what that has been represented in the media, the superhuman part of it, because we're very superhuman. the superhuman also relates with the super consciousness. So we're tapping into more of our super consciousness. And what is the super consciousness? Super consciousness is accessing more of our sourceness and then expressing the experience accordingly. Go ahead.
Scott is asking, it seems we've tried this ascension process before and failed. What makes us sure we will succeed this time?
Well, it's up to Scotty to do it. That's why he's beaming a lot of people up. Beam me up, Scotty. Yes, it has been tried, and it has been attempted in many levels. But this time, there's a confirmation. There is a commitment that has been made. Well, it's just about the cough. Okay, that was made accordingly. That in one way or another, that we this time go follow through. So this is why we're getting the amount of support that we are getting now than we were in previous attempts. Okay, even though when we're looking at the Lemurians and Arcturians and the Atlanteans, let's call it the Atlanteans at this point. The Atlantean was the race before this one, and the Lemurian was the race before that. But they kind of bridged each other at this point because there was a shift from the Lemurian to the Atlanteans. And yes, they were attempted, of course, and they I wouldn't say failed. They just weren't able to get what they originally intended. But there was a huge experience with that, and it allowed this species to be created that made sure that that wasn't possible. Now, I have to say that we have crossed many times over areas where we would go and what Scotty said, fail. Well, this is where the intervention came in. The intervention came in to facilitate us, but not to take away the experience. But at the same time, that facilitation was really just so that we wouldn't go through it. So this is the intent. How fast we do it, how effective we do it, how quickly, and how much of our natural design we take on will depend on what we choose to do at this point in time. And you know, we've chosen to move forward. Not everybody on the planet wants to move forward. Some of them have chosen just to be here until and then leave. Others, you know, are going to be here and then swap with different souls or whatever it is because they want, they didn't come here to have, they came here to play, they came here to possibly contribute in one way or another, but they didn't want to follow through completely. And that's an option because each signature has its own free will, if you want to call it that, to play moving forward. So anyways, that's that. So the ego is the one that makes us believe that, you know, we're not these powerful beings that we are. And then, of course, the associated labels that are different, and definitions. So DE, okay, DE. All right, sorry. All right. I don't want to confuse people. Whoop, one too many there. uh, I need some more drugs. Okay, what else were you going to say? Okay. So anyways, this gives you a little base of what's going on. So embrace your superhuman part of you. So we're going to do a process. I'm out of juice now, so I may have to lie down to do the process. No, I'm just kidding. But I am out of juice. But we're going to do a little process to activate or access our superhuman part so that it will give us a bit of an oomph in carrying on through all these changes and levels of polarities and all the fun stuff that's playing out. And it depends on where you are. But Scotty's going to stand by to beam you up if necessary. And the beaming up is basically leaving physical form and allowing another soul to come in and whatever else. So, but we have the freedom to do so. It's not that Scotty's got to do it for us. I'm just teasing with that because, you know, the Star Trek thing, if anybody actually remembers that, you know, beam me up, Scotty. So I thought I'd use it just to be a little bit more humorous, but I'm not super excited humorous today. Having a fun time with a nice little migraine headache. I wouldn't say little, big one. And many other things. So what we're going to do is we're going to make ourselves comfortable and we're going to do a process. This process is yours to activate the superhuman. So we're going to take 1 minute to do so. I'm going to have a drink of water here so that. No, no. We are not going to drop people. So maybe just a tad. Meanwhile, guys, make yourself comfortable. It won't be a long one, but at the same time, I would prefer that you guys are comfortable so that you don't have your physical discomfort as a distraction. Okay. Yes. Yes. That's the one. Okay. So let's put our attention on the breath, and we're going to utilize the breath. I'm sorry? The mic's on, yeah. Okay. All right. Just want to make sure everybody can hear us. Okay. So focus, put your attention on the breath, and let's focus on the breath, and let's be fully, fully present in the breath. So pay attention, and I don't mean pay attention as a distraction, just be fully present with your breathing process. Feel the sensation as you're taking a deep breath, a comfortable deep breath, and as you exhale. And just be fully present because right now all that exists is my voice and your breath. Each time you breathe in, taking in beautifully the energies that are being provided from us, for us, and from us, because we're all contributing and supporting each other. And also, as we exhale, we're letting go of any tightness, any distraction, we're letting go of any resistance, any discomfort that we may be feeling in the body and within our mind, where there's a distraction that may come in as the artificial intelligence and ego. So we're just going to breathe it out, and we're just going to focus on the breath and establishing with us a rhythm of the breath. Now, the rhythm of the breath, as I've said before, is a representation of the rhythm of life. We take on, create experiences, we utilize the experience, and then we put it back into the field. Some of it is utilized by other aspects of ourselves, and other of it just goes back to source essence, and it is a new creation. The reason some of it goes into source essence because it was very specific for your requirements and need and is not appealing in any way or shape or form from other aspects of ourselves. The ones that are shared with other aspects of ourselves are the ones that can utilize it and expand it and utilize it in a way where they can really enhance whatever they're experiencing and bring it to the next level. And this is the beauty of it because we're all one here and we're all playing with each other, we're all sharing with one another, even though we've bought into the idea that we're not one and that we are separate. That was created within the inverted matrix, within the definitions and labels around that, and the ego has been reinforcing that more and more. But as we continue to become more and more present, more and more focused, we step into more of a powerful state. For us to access more of our superhuman and is to be present. In the presence, you are accessing more of yourself. Since we are evolving constantly, our experiential range is increasing, the inputs of energy is coming in, the experiential realms that are beautiful brother sister souls that are contributors of our DNA is being plugged in and utilized more and more, and that is changing our moment. It's changing and expanding every aspect of ourselves so that in a way everything that we create is brand new. Many of us have been concerned, how do we create new? Well, by being present. By being present, you're allowing everything that's being offered as new resources and basic operating systems for us to utilize to create brand new. But ultimately, we are creating the new world. We are utilizing the platform of organic 3D and 5D. And by utilizing it, that we are also upgrading not only ourselves, but the platform itself. But it goes even further because when we are in that state, fully more integrated, we are actually activating more of the parts of the platform that are waiting for us to activate. The reason they're being activated in stages is because we need to be ready for that rather than just activating it completely. And the other thing is too, as we're focusing on the breath, we're also having feedback that's coming through that is utilizing ourselves by not only feeling what the feedback of our platform is providing, but also how we are utilizing that platform and how we feel to engage. This allows us to expand. This allows us to become more of that essence we call the superhuman. We are superhuman because we're a multiple race and species modification and implementation. And we use all of that more and more as we're going along. This is one of the guarantees that we've provided ourselves by utilizing more of these upgraded species at this time around, which other species have not been contributing to the same degree before or haven't been involved. We have a lot more that is being provided at this time for us to utilize. Yes, we still have the opportunity to get lost in part of the game, but that is only for us to reach a certain level of saturation without any judgment and really making a new choice. The choice is ours to make. There is no right choice or wrong choice. Each choice enhances us. But where we put our focus, what we utilize each step of the way, is something that we choose at any point in time and utilize based on where we're at and then move on forward. Each one of us has taken on a certain form to carry a certain spectrum of light, a certain level of information, a certain level of expression to facilitate the whole. Because we've come here to specifically provide what we have as an offering, that offering is not only from a physical form, that offering is also at this point in time from our human entity, but our souls. Our souls are coming from all different dimensional expressions and experiences. It has different levels of consciousness from different experiential realms, but it's also plugging it in. Now, some of us already came in very much more elaborately expanded and open, but have reduced our accessibility to a certain degree, only to give the opportunity for the collective, since we are all part of that collective, to do what they came here to do and to become more of a team effort in activating all parts of this expression and experience. And this is the beauty of it. So as we're stepping into, we now activate within ourselves the highest level of superhumanness. Our human that is utilizing 9 to 12 and 14 different DNA strands, utilizing more and more of it, opening to stream forward, utilizing more of the experiences and higher consciousness that the human entity has to offer, all of our brother sister souls that are our over souls, and also our twin soul, and utilizing also all the highest offerings that the human species in through the human body is providing at this point in time, including the energies that are being streamed through us from Gaia, which is also highly tied into the inner earth fifth dimensional template, and it's being offered on both platforms to be utilized to the degree that it serves us. The energies that are coming in from the solar system at this point in time is also stimulating the reactivation, restructuring, updating codes, and so forth. The energies that are also coming in from our galactic sun is also providing these beautiful, powerful stimulations for us at this time. We have many sources coming through. We have beautiful angelic realms. We have also different entities that are from in non-form, also guides and at this point at time that are all contributing and working with us hand in hand. All of it understands that the progress we make by supporting us and allowing us to do what we came here to do, that it enhances the whole, and that goes right to the whole of what we call sourceness. Every playground is a playground. Every opportunity in physical form is another expressions of sourceness, but based on all of them are categorized and designed very specifically to provide certain bands of experiences that are not attainable on other playgrounds. This playground has quite a variance, quite a capacity, but at the same time is also very instrumental in the upgrading of our quadrant of the galaxy and our galaxy itself, including our solar system and our universe. The reason I'm saying all of this at this point in time, as we are going into that deeper state of reactivation, we are also activating in ourselves not only our remembrance, but also to be able to access those codes, those frequencies that we have in ourselves that we have allowed to go into a dormant state for a period of time and only recently has been starting to open up. By focusing and being present each moment and being ourselves fully each moment as the integral aspects of who we are, being our authentic self at this point in time is very powerful in really bringing forth what we came here to offer and also here to experience and to enhance not only our collective playground but also all the different levels of playgrounds that we are interconnected, but also to support all the different human entities, the human bodies, but also to support our souls, our oversouls, and all the beautiful souls that are connected at this point in time. This is not linear and isolated in any way, shape, or form any longer, even though much of that was the case before. That was never 100%, but now it is opening up more than ever. We remind ourselves that we are these powerful beings, and these powerful beings have powerful capacities and capabilities at this point in time. These capacities and capabilities have we've put on in a dormant state collectively at this point and also individually. We're now giving ourselves the opportunity to reactivate more and more of it in stages to facilitate our journey without being too disruptive in what is taking place at this point in time. We realize from an ego perspective we want to be destructive, but that destructive or distractive. But at this point in time, that is not our choice from a higher perspective, and that higher perspective is a combination of all makeups of who we are. So we remind and activate within ourselves our sourceness, our essence of source, the essence of all existence, the essence of immortality, the essence of uh, completely wide open platform, and to be able to be completely at this point in time endless and expansive in any way, shape, or form. There is no limits whatsoever except to what we've imposed and that we are eliminating bit by bit as we go along. We are choosing to connect with our body. So let's connect ourselves to the body. Let's feel ourselves present in the body as we continue to breathe and be present. We're asking the beautiful codes that are coming from the sun to really cater for each and every one of us exactly what we need and to allow it to flow. We take down all barriers and restrictions that we may have imposed at this point in time, but whatever is being encoded at this point, we will use only the amount that we are ready to use, but the encodements will be there and able to be activated at any point in time. The upgrades are constantly being streamed at all times, so it is not going to be isolated in any way, shape, or form, and it is not finite in a way that we only allow what we allow now. No, this is opening up the platform, opening up the streaming to be able to have all of this come through. Some of our brothers sister souls on different dimensions have open portals and allowing their energies from their planet to come through. That also bypasses somewhat the organic matrix, but at the same time, the organic matrix is also being upgraded, so that these portals and these energy fields that are coming in is actually upgrading us so that we could utilize more of the organic matrix, and also to utilize more of our true platform of organic 3D and organic 5D. And we're also allowing the beautiful energies coming in from our galactic central sun to be streaming through us and utilizing what serves us right now at this point in time. We're also opening ourselves to receive beautiful energies and codes from Gaia and all the beings that have participated and are on the planet at this time that we are not aware of, that are holding certain energies and making certain modifications to make us be much more efficient in the process that we are doing at this point in time. In any way, we're never demising our capacities and capabilities. We're always activating more of our capabilities and capacities. As much as we, the ego, would like to say that, we want to be able to do certain things, we will. All that is of highest service in the different stages that would be beneficial. We're not here to override the growth. We're not here to override all our brother sister souls' growth and also what the souls have come here to do. Therefore, we are activating certain parts of it as we are ready. This is not escapism. It's not where we put our focus on escaping anything. We are fully embodied and experiencing all parts of this much more powerfully than ever before. As we continue to experience this even more fully, we also take all the beautiful DNA offerings that we have and we now start to activate the ones that are most suited for our experience. We also let go of all labels, definitions, and also hardwiring of patterns that we've established. We're letting go of all addictions and so forth that are no longer serving. Now, some will remain and will fade away in stages, but we will observe it from each stage of our evolution and expansion and enlightenment and be able to purge through it much more quickly. The pulses and energies that Gaia is providing through different energetic fields and also from the sun and also from all the beautiful planets that are associated with us in our solar system are all contributing and assisting at this point in time. All of it we are allowing to come through us, to empower us, to give us the opportunity to utilize exactly what serves us at each step of the way. This is the beauty and the power that we've provided ourselves at this point. This is an exciting time, and we recognize this more and more, and we are choosing to recognize it even further, that this is a powerful time. This is an exceptional time. This is a time where we really get to shine our true colors, to bring ourselves to this playground much more fully of our natural state, and to be able to utilize what we have gained, not only from the experience of each and every time we've come here, but each of the experiences that we are bringing forth from different incarnations at this point. So let's allow ourselves to make these energies move through us. And it's not a force, it's just allowing, opening ourselves up, allowing ourselves to open our heart, to allow the very higher self of ourselves to really, really be present. And also our solar plexus that opens us up to our human entity much more clearly, and our root chakra that allows us at this point in time to connect much more with Gaia, and also our third eye to have all these beautiful other input from different locales, or what looks like different locales within the source essence in different playgrounds or different representation and different bands of frequency to also be shared with us at this point in time. We are utilizing all these resources that are being offered to us to the degree that it serves us. We are ultimately the one that has the free will, the one that actually decides how much we want to participate. Everything that we choose is done for our highest good because we know what our own highest good is. The ego's version of the highest good is a construct that is more of a distraction and to keep us in the old pattern and go into frustration and so forth. But we're not giving power to that because our true knowing is not frustrated in any way, shape, or form. To facilitate us further, at this point, we ask your souls, all of your souls, we call in your souls to fully embody you, fully and completely at this time, to activate the highest level of home frequency. That is the frequency it has gained in its experience on all different realms, on all different playgrounds, in different forms that it has taken on, to utilize the highest level of it with while it being fully integrated in what we are experiencing at this point in time. And by doing so, we are upgrading our physical existence, our physical frequency, and so forth, and also allowing us to feel more empowered in that state of sourceness, and to feel more of that sourceness within ourselves and seeing much more potentiality. We also ask at this time our human frequency to be reactivated in its true design to the fullest degree that is most serving us. And we also ask our source essence to facilitate and participate to assist us at this time to do so. And in doing so, stimulating much more of our human state of being in its most natural state. This will change the construct of our body, will rewire how we feel, experience life to the degree that we are ready. It will also change how we utilize the energies around us to support us, where we become much more empowered, only utilizing what best suits. That will change also our consumption, will also change what we're drawn to consume and to be part of. This is all happening in stages, and it's all facilitating at this point in time. We're also activating that human component of ourselves to be much more aligned with our true design, the true blueprint that was the full makeup, that had the different DNA strands, much more contributing. So even though the DNA strands are not fully operating at this point in time and only operating in different stages and degrees, that we are using those genetic encodements to become much more prevalent in our experience, allowing our bodies to be upgraded to more closely to reflect the original design while experiencing the upgrades that are being streamed at this point in time. So that's be fully present in that state. Be fully present in that frequency at this point in time as your upgrades are taking place. We understand at this point we are powerful beings. We have no limits. Those were all imposed and created as an opportunity for us to experience that while we disconnected to a certain degree from our sourceness. But we are reversing all of that. We are powerful beings. What we're capable of doing here is amazing. What we have to our disposal is amazing. What we can do and achieve is absolutely amazing. And we're doing this in a fast, rapid, transforming playground while we are going through a fast and quick transformation of the human experience. All of it is being brought back online in a very powerful way. And you have chosen to be part of it. It does not matter what role you're playing. Your role is instrumental. Your role is just as important. We're all beautiful pieces of the puzzle, and each piece of the puzzle is necessary for everything that is playing out. Yes, you may be experiencing upgrades along the way so that your piece of the puzzle becomes more aligned with the energies and consciousness of this time, but at the same time, regardless, you are still that beautiful piece of the puzzle that is required at this point in time. So all of this is all taking place as we are experiencing ourselves much more fully than ever before at this time. You're receiving all the codes that you require. You are receiving all the stimulation that serves you best. We open ourselves to feel these beautiful movement of energies, all these beautiful codes being turned on that best serves us. Each one will experience it slightly different. Each one will be more prepared to be the highest aspects of themselves while playing on this playground, which we are all sharing together. We choose now to step into our superhumanness more than ever, our supercharged, our expansive humanness with all its upgrades to the degree it serves us at this time to do what we came here to do. And this will continue to upgrade, modify, accentuate, expand each step of the way. We will, from this now point in time, we will remind ourselves over and over again who we are as these powerful beings in form, as these powerful beings as source within form, as these powerful beings with massive amount of experience and playing exactly what we came here to play, bringing that online more than ever. And that is so. This process will continue along the way. By repeating this process, we will reinforce it over and over again. The frequencies that we access will continue to upgrade because each time we access, there has been already upgrades occurring and different spectrums of readiness within ourselves. So utilize this as a powerful tool. This is your tool. This is for you to use. You have constructed it together with all of us coming together at this time. This is yours. Yours in a very powerful way. I am a representative of you, and I have come here for a very specific purpose as you have. We're all playing our roles. We're all being very powerful beings, doing what we came here to do. This playground, what we call Earth, is really upgrading in such a powerful way. Our human physical forms and our expressions and our dance on life is upgrading in very profound ways. It does not matter what we've experienced up to this point in time. That is not important. It is an enrichment that we've experienced, but no longer a governance, and that is so. So let's put our attention back onto the breath, and let's be fully present with the breath, feeling the full rhythm as you breathe in and out. Take deep breaths, but comfortable deep breaths. And we're not here to strain ourselves. And as you exhale, exhale completely without any strain. We're here to flow. We're here to play with fluidity. And let's focus on the breath. And let's be present with the breath. Bringing ourselves more conscious of the body, more conscious. We're not here to override the body. We have come here to participate within the body. This is why you're in the body. Other souls have chosen not to be in the body or have chosen to leave the body. But that's not your choice. Your choice, because you're present, is for you to be here in that body, to utilize the body in ways you haven't utilized before, and that is so. So let's use the next 5 breaths. At the end of the 5th breath, as you fully complete that breath, you can gently open your eyes. You'll be wide awake, feeling good, feeling healthy, feeling the way you'd feel after having a beautiful, deep, restful sleep, having a beautiful, restful, re-energizing, and empowered. So each breath in and out, the next 5 breaths, each one bringing you more and more present in your reality in physical form. After the 5th breath, gently open your eyes and being fully present of your reality. This reality is yours to utilize from this moment. This is a completely wide open form of reality, and that is so. So welcome back. Welcome back to this beautiful aware reality playground that we have co-constructed and have chosen to play forward. in amazing ways. Thank you for being part of all of this. Thank you for every aspect that each one of us have been brave enough to play. Today marks the day of my entry onto the planet and taking form and utilizing the soul much more powerfully, even though the soul was participating at that point in time in my mother's womb. But this is when I somewhat presented a separate expression without being totally connected with my mother, as we all have done. And so here we are, been here since 1957 and have been holding space and really experiencing life and waiting for each and every one of us as we come aligned together. So there's a level of excitement because each one of you are such powerful marvels, and we have come here to play together. This is an exciting time, and I really, really appreciate your braveness and capacity to be here. And when I say braveness, it's not that it has to be difficult. And yeah, it could be representing as difficult as long as the ego has been presenting it that way. But as you know, you're a very powerful being, and these powerful beingness that we are is capable of doing so much more amazing than what we've experienced up to this point in time. Part of the awakening process is bringing all that online. I thank you, everybody, for your contributions and your support. I haven't been able to respond to everybody for your supports and things of that nature. It's been a little difficult with all the inputs that have been coming in, not only from the work that I have to do, but also the amount of emails and Facebook messages and text messages and WhatsApp messages and all of that fun stuff. So it's been, overwhelming to be able to keep up. So it's not that we've forgotten. We thank you. We appreciate everything that you're doing. And if this stuff resonates for you, please feel free in the link and also what Kimberly may post in the comment section. You can contribute to support the work that we're doing. The other thing is that we also notice that we're not reaching as many people at this point, so it's really, really instrumental for you to share it. And also, if you're not part of the Advancing Consciousness group, do so. It's called the Advancing Consciousness Series group. Join the group and, post comments like on any page that you're on. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, click the notification bell, because I've had some people say, we don't know when you're coming on until afterwards. So I know there's a lot of changes going on, and some of the stuff is being stopped in the sense of reaching you to the same degree, but we can do so. Like it if it resonates with you. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Click the notice bell right next to the subscribe if you're on YouTube, Facebook. Like it, share a comment, do whatever, each part and share it. Please share like it was said in the beginning there. Is there anything else you wanted to share, Kimberly?
No, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for the lovely happy birthday wishes to Franco.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. It's not necessary, but I thank you.
Yeah.
I have such joy and excitement for all of us coming together and all the amazing things that we're doing. And, we don't have to rely on Scotty to beam us up at this point, because, it's going to get more and more fun. Yeah, sometimes the ego will project it as not fun and through a judgmental viewpoint, but that's not the thing. And the same thing with all the polarities going on and the offerings that we're having right now to get caught up in the polarities and to get caught up in the so-called lower vibrational lower vibration representation and so forth, or energies that we would only get there just to give it a taste, to wrap it up. But this is the thing, we have not chosen to support that. This is why all these transformations are going on, and we're not here to wait for a savior. I'm not it. Trump or any of these other people are not. We're all just playing a part, like every one of you are playing a part. Each one of you is so powerful and instrumental for all the changes that are going on. It is not solely on the shoulders of certain individuals. Yeah, I did take on that many, many years ago, of feeling a sense of responsibility, especially when humanity wasn't progressing and moving forward in the way that it was. But I was also stifled at the same time what I could share. Now that's opening up more and more. But again, the only reason it's opening up more and more because you're more ready to utilize it, and you're utilizing without my requirement. But at the same time, we're all powerful, so let's remember that. So thank you. Go out and play, enjoy. If you have not, joined us for this workshop that we did 2 days ago on Sunday, September the 20th, 2020, we have in the link of the body and also in the link of the comments for you to be able to access the audio and video recordings of it. We will send you a quickly uncut version. That's the full length, close to 8 hours of it. But we are preparing and chopping up all the difference under different categories so that you can use that as a reference point. And then it will be also offered in audio. So if you place the order, then automatically, as soon as it's available, you'll get that. But to start off with, you can get the full length so you can give yourself an opportunity to expose it. Till then, until next Tuesday, go out and play and have a blast.